Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live behind bars in one of the most dangerous prisons in the world? Today, we'll take you on a chilling journey through 10 of the most terrifying penitentiary complexes on the planet. Get ready to discover a dark side of humanity where survival is the only rule, and hope is a rare luxury. Before we get started, I would like to ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned in a previous video, I'm just starting out, and it's quite challenging to make videos on my own with limited resources. But with your subscription and like, you help me a lot. Now that I've made my request, let's begin. Our journey begins in Gitarama, Rwanda, one of the most overcrowded and unsanitary prisons in the world. Originally designed for 400 prisoners, it now holds over 6,000 inmates under inhumane conditions. Here, prisoners are forced to live in cramped spaces, with no adequate access to food, clean water, or sanitation. The overcrowding is so severe that many inmates spend their days standing or sleeping huddled on the concrete floor, where diseases spread rapidly. The lack of hygiene and medical neglect results in severe infections, like gangrene, which often lead to amputations without anesthesia. Tensions are constant, and conflicts between prisoners frequently end in deadly violence. This is the grim and brutal reality of Gitarama, a living hell where human dignity is lost. Our next stop is Israel. Camp 1391 is a security facility so secretive that its exact location is kept strictly confidential. This detention camp is known for housing suspected terrorists and individuals deemed dangerous to Israel's national security. Operations began after the Six-Day War, but little is known about what really happens behind its walls. The few available accounts describe a scenario of extreme isolation, where detainees are kept without any contact with the outside world. Physical and psychological torture are common practices, and the lack of legal oversight raises serious concerns about human rights. In this oppressive environment, Camp 1391 remains a symbol of what happens when power operates without transparency or accountability. In Russia, we find the Black Dolphin Prison, one of the most secure and feared prisons in the world. Located in Soleiletsk, Orenburg Oblast, it houses about 700 prisoners, all convicted of heinous crimes such as murder, terrorism, and cannibalism. Inmates are under constant surveillance and are not allowed to rest or sit during the day. When being moved within the prison, they are blindfolded and escorted by armed guards so they cannot memorize the layout of the facility. The security and surveillance measures are so rigorous that any escape attempt is practically impossible. Conditions in Black Dolphin are harsh and unforgiving. Prisoners spend most of their time in cells that are constantly lit, with no access to external stimuli, leading many to suffer severe psychological problems. Black Dolphin is more than a prison, it is a fortress of despair where life is defined by total control and complete isolation. In El Salvador, Ciudad Barrios Prison is a battleground where life is governed by notorious gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18. Originally designed to house 800 prisoners, the prison often holds more than 2,500 inmates, making overcrowding a critical issue and violence inevitable. Gangs exert significant control within the prison, often surpassing the authority of the guards. This anarchic environment results in high levels of violence, extortion, and drug trafficking, turning the prison into a microcosm of the gang wars plaguing the country. Unsanitary living conditions, lack of access to medical care, and insufficient food are just part of the daily life for Ciudad Barrios inmates. In this place where law is dictated by brutality and force, survival is the only priority, and the hope for rehabilitation is nearly non-existent. The Bangkok Hilton is the ironic nickname for Bang Kwang Prison, one of Thailand's most feared facilities. Located in Nonthaburi, just outside Bangkok, this prison is notorious for its strict security and extremely harsh conditions, especially for those sentenced to death. Here, inmates live in overcrowded cells, facing suffocating heat and inadequate food. New arrivals spend their first 3 months shackled, a practice that symbolizes the lack of freedom and despair that permeates the prison. Many of the inmates are foreigners caught in drug-related crimes, facing long sentences in a system that offers little hope for rehabilitation. Isolation is a common tactic, and the conditions are so severe that many prisoners succumb to despair. In Bangkok, the future is uncertain, and hope is a distant concept. Known as Russia's Alcatraz, Petek Prison is located on a remote island in Lake Novozero, Vologda. This is one of the country's most isolated and maximum security penitentiaries, designed to house criminals deemed extremely dangerous, such as serial killers and terrorists. With a capacity for about 200 prisoners, the prison keeps inmates in solitary confinement for 22 hours a day, minimizing any human interaction. Surrounded by icy waters, the prison makes any escape attempt nearly impossible. Prisoners are subjected to strict surveillance, and the conditions are of complete isolation, contributing to an environment of desolation and psychological despair. Petek Prison is more than just a facility, it is a maximum security fortress where freedom is not an option and time seems to stand still, reflecting the complete isolation from the outside world. Camp 22, also known as the Horyong concentration camp, is one of North Korea's darkest secrets. Established in 1965, this political prisoner camp is one of the largest and most notorious in the country, known for its brutal and inhumane practices. Prisoners, including women and children, are subjected to extreme conditions of forced labor, torture, and malnutrition. The camp population includes not only political dissidents but also their families, imprisoned under the policy of guilt by association. The electrified fences and constant surveillance make escape nearly impossible, while guards exercise absolute power over the prisoners. Accounts from former detainees highlight experiences of physical and psychological abuse, summary executions, and inhumane medical experiments. Camp 22 is a grim reminder of what happens when human rights are completely disregarded. Palmyra Prison in Syria is a place steeped in terror and brutality. During the regime of Hafez al-Assad and later Bashar al-Assad, Palmyra was used as a tool of political repression, where thousands were tortured and executed. The methods of torture here are infamous, including brutal beatings, electric shocks, and unbearable living conditions. Inmates face an environment of constant fear, where brutality is a daily tactic used to maintain control. During the Syrian civil war, the prison was partially destroyed, but its memories remain as a testament to the atrocities committed. In Palmyra, the line between life and death is thin, and human dignity is crushed by tyranny. This place is a symbol of what happens when power is exercised unchecked. Sabaneta Prison, located in Maracaibo, Venezuela, was one of the most violent prisons in Latin America until it was closed in 2013. Known for its extreme overcrowding and chaotic conditions, Sabaneta was a boiling cauldron of violence and corruption. With a capacity for 700 inmates, the prison often held more than 3,500, resulting in an environment where law and order were practically non-existent. Armed gangs controlled the prison, setting the rules and frequently clashing violently with rivals. One of the most notorious events occurred in 1994 when a massacre left over 100 prisoners dead. This incident highlights the chaotic and deadly nature of Sabaneta, where human life held little value. Even after its closure, the prison remains a symbol of inhumanity and a reminder of the urgent need for prison reform. Carandiru in São Paulo, Brazil, was the site of one of the world's most infamous prison massacres. In 1992, a police operation to quell a riot resulted in the deaths of 111 prisoners, an event that shocked the country and exposed the flaws of the Brazilian prison system. Before its closure in 2002, the House of Detention of São Paulo was known for its deplorable conditions, with overcrowded cells, lack of hygiene, and an atmosphere of constant violence. The presence of diseases like tuberculosis was common, and the lack of internal control meant that gangs often set the rules. The 1992 massacre remains a grim symbol of systemic failures and brutality within prisons. In 2002, Carandiru was demolished, but its lessons still echo in the fight for more humane and effective prison reform. So folks, that was today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Share your opinions in the comments about which prison you think is the most terrifying and why. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.